All right, I'm here with Tristan, founder of Little Beauties. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit more around your journey with Little Beauties?
Yeah, sure, man. Hey, thanks for having me. My name's Tristan Wastney. I'm one of the co-founders of Little Beauties. We're based in Nelson, and we started the company back in 2010. We're a family business, and we grow our own fruit, largely feijoas, and we turn them into premium dried fruit products. We initially got started because we had a whole bunch of fruit we didn't know what to do with, and we really wanted to try and add some value to that fruit, so it wasn't going to waste. So we sort of created a model around solving this waste stream of around fruit in New Zealand. Gold kiwi fruit being probably the largest waste stream we could see. I've got a background in dairy farming. I was feeding a lot of fruit to my cows and things, and I was getting the fruit for essentially nothing, and so saw the opportunity to take that fruit and do something with it. And so that kind of what kicked off Little Beauties, and my wife had the great idea of dipping them in chocolate, and so that's kind of how we came up with the name Little Beauty. So these lovely little fruits that we're dipping in chocolate and send them all around to friends and family, so all around the world.
Nice, interesting. I mean, everyone loves chocolate, right? So recipe for success there, I'm sure. And you mentioned about taking this product all over the world. Do you want to expand a little bit on your journey being a founder and taking a product overseas? How did you go about deciding to do that, and what was it like taking a local product overseas?
Yeah, it's quite a broad question, but I'll do my best to answer that. So I guess the New Zealand market is relatively small for our particular type of product. We're producing a niche product, and we always knew that for us to get scale and to really make a difference with just how much wasted fruit there is in New Zealand, we would have to export. And we, you don't know what you don't know. We literally knew nothing when it came to exporting when we first started, and there was quite a large push for us to get into exporting, because we were raising a lot of capital, we had very, very high cost, and we needed to match that with high revenue. So we started to go to the US. We thought that the US was a really, really good market for our type of premium products. And we did a little bit of market research. We actually went over to Boulder, Colorado. It's kind of like the organics capital of the US, and thought that'd be a good place to start and get a bit of market feedback. So we did that, had a really, really good response, and we were like, yeah, they're all telling us that we need to be there. And I guess the other side of it too was, at the time we were running a Saturday market. We got a lot of tourists out of the US that would come and visit us every week, and they were saying, man, this stuff would go so well in California, there's nothing like it here, it's so healthy, it's totally on trend, this would get eaten up and you guys would smash it. So I guess we were getting these little inklings of feedback from directly from people that lived in the US. And also we started selling a bit of stuff online as well, shipping over to the US, and the fact that they were willing to pay $50 for shipping to get some dried fruit there seemed outrageous to us. But not that we were doing big sales there or anything, but it was interesting. So we thought, man, maybe there's something into that. And so we decided to give it a crack. I think we sent, to sort of make it all work, we needed to send basically half a container over there to sort of justify the 3PL cost and the US packaging cost and setting up with the FDA registration and just all the painful things you have to go through when you're looking to export into the US. And by the way, we did this all at the start of COVID. So that kind of threw a real spanner in the works, but also forced us to do it as well, because we lost all our markets here in locally. We got deleted off the shelf. We had almost no revenue coming in. So pretty stressful time. I think I had a container on the water with 5 or 6 pallets in it, heading over to the US, and I didn't even have a website built. Had no idea I was going to sell this stuff. I was very much going by the seat of my pants. So yeah, I guess what the things to look out for that we were sort of going a little bit blind on. You've got to understand whether you want it to be a B2B supplier or a direct-to-consumer supplier of your products, because that's going to send you in 2 different directions. If you're choosing to be direct-to-consumer to begin with, and maybe you want to do both, and I'd suggest you do want to do both, tap into both those markets, but you've got to find a 3PL that's going to be able to do both those things. You also need to understand where your core market is that you want to target. So, and what state you want to be in, because each state is like their own country. So, for example, we thought that Memphis was the state for us to have our 3PL, and that was largely dictated by the fact that was pretty much the only place we could find a 3PL at the time of COVID, and we. The only port we could get into was in LA, and we literally couldn't find a 3PL in LA at the time. The logistics and of freight was terrible, but like shocking. You couldn't even get a truck, so that was a major barrier. The reason we went to Memphis was because it was that was where FedEx was set up. You can pretty much get to any state within 48 hours, and we're like, man, it makes perfect sense to go there. So we sent our products, landed in LA. We then had to put them on a truck. They then drove for 10 to 15 hours to get to Memphis, unloaded, and then we started advertising our products. By that stage, I had a website built, and I think we were just using a US sticker that we slapped on the back of our packets, and we changed the front of our packets when we got them printed to show ounces instead of grams and that type of thing. And that was quite a big cost. So we're fully committed at this point, and we didn't even really know what product would sell. We didn't have a clear idea of our demographic. We had strong data here in New Zealand and Australia, and we just assumed that it would be the same type of people buying our products in the US. Well, we were quite wrong on that. So, for example, 90% of the people that buy our product here in New Zealand are women. We found that 60% of the people buying our products in the US were men, which completely surprised us.
Yeah.
And it was only in a particular state as well. And so it's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack. It's very hard to try and get the data you need to really understand what state, what demographic, what products, and all those sorts of things that you're trying to understand to really drill down on the right thing. So what we found was that people were buying our products in California. So I was literally shipping them back to LA. And so the cost of logistics was just outrageous. And then, because our products have chocolate on them as well, how the heck do I get our products there without them melting? Because it was taking over 40 hours, well, between 48 hours and longer to get there. And I think COVID played a big part in that, around timing of how long it was. Sometimes it would take up to 10 days, and it was completely out of our control. So we just instantly got hit with all these barriers because we just didn't have that data and that understanding, and it cost us a lot of money because we had to pay to get those understandings, and it was a lot of pain. So we ended up basically just halting on the whole thing, and yeah, we sold. The sales we got were good, but certainly nowhere near as good as what we wanted. The money we spent on getting that data through running Facebook ads and the SEO, Google ads, and all that sort of thing, it just didn't deliver, what we were hoping, because we had to sell our products for a lot more to justify the logistics. We had to try and get people to buy more products in one order, all the things to try and make it work, and this is all just learnings as we're going along. So once we realised that, oh shit, actually most of our products are selling in California, that's where the bulk of our sales are coming from, we need to be there. So eventually we set up in LA, and I had a 3PL that was basically 30 minutes from the port. So I think understanding the logistics of whatever you're trying to sell is probably one of the most key things, because that's where a large cost is going to lie. And there's a lot of pain, because even if you have the best products and even good logistics to get the product to your 3PL, how do you get it to your customer as quickly as possible? So you really have to think about that, and think about what state, and just really just focus on one state, and then maybe expand to another state. There's a lot of 3PLs that will only do B2B or only do direct to consumer. It can be quite a challenge to find both. So sometimes prepping the pallets or the product that's ready for in a B2B format, that's easy for a direct consumer type business to then supply B2B, and you can negotiate with them if you're willing to do the work up front. So we did a bit of that, to the point where they weren't refrigerated. It wasn't a refrigerated 3PL, and I couldn't find one. And if you do find one, you're paying a lot of money for it. So I made sure that it was going into a room that had an air conditioner unit in it, and then I was like, flip, I need ice packs. Do you guys store ice packs? No? Cool. So I had to go buy them a freezer. And as I went on Amazon, bought a freezer, got that delivered to it, and then they could store the ice packs and they could do that role for me. So we really had to think outside the box a bit to get that problem solved. It was very, very challenging, incredibly stressful. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but a lot of risk comes with a lot of reward too, and I guess that opened up a lot of opportunity into like Costco and quite a few other online B2B platforms that we could move pallets. So, but when you're exporting, you're pretty much starting from scratch. No one knows who you are. Brands from New Zealand are so small. We're like nothing in compared to the size of the US, and the scale of the US is just so huge. So I think, that's something to think about. If you're looking to export. And I certainly wouldn't recommend going to the US as your first country to export to. It's probably one of the hardest countries to export to, from my own personal experience. And we've exported to Japan, China, Vietnam, and Australia. So I guess if you're thinking of exporting, I think Australia is a really, really good place to start. And I guess in regards to support, like who supported us and how did we get the information needed to even do this, we tapped shoulders with NZTE, and they were probably our main first contact really, and first put a call to wrap some specialised support around us. These guys have offices in almost every country in the world, and they have specialists. They have one guy that just specialises in logistics, shipping, another person that just specialises in Facebook ads, another person that just specialises in 3PLs. So to be able to connect with those people in those countries to understand the lay of the land, and get some recommendations, and certainly that helps us understand what the cost structures are going to be. That's also really, really helpful. So NZT actually played a pretty strong role in our ability to export. What else? Is there anything else we want to know around the export front?
So you mentioned that NZTE was a really helpful local resource that you utilised before going into these markets. Was there any other resource that you tapped into, or how did you get to a position where you felt you were prepared enough to suddenly make that move?
If I'm completely honest, I'm not sure if I should say this or not, but we weren't prepared. 100% weren't prepared. We were flying by the seat of our pants. We just made the call because it was almost on a gut feel basis, and a lot of it was based on assumption, and that was a mistake. That cost us a lot of money. I wouldn't recommend that for anybody to do that. We had to raise quite a lot of money and that came with a lot of pressure to grow the company fast. And again, I don't think that's a wise move for any business. So we had the recipe for success, but it was all the intricacies of logistics and certifications and all of that sort of thing that we had to learn the hard way. And so I think if you're looking to get into the US, make sure you do your groundwork around your packaging, your website, understanding who your core market is, and that may be a trip to the US and actually sending out a bunch of samples, going and talking to different wholesale markets and different businesses, getting some influencers involved that can help promote your products. There's so many things you can do, right, to get some data and get some understanding without fully diving all in and getting set up there. Ideally, you really want to have someone in the business that is based over there, that can keep an eye on things. And I found that people in the US they always tell you what you want to hear because they're very money driven and they want to get that deal. It's very competitive over there. So we're pretty humble, us Kiwis, and we kind of, I guess at the beginning I sort of just took them for their word, and then we quickly realised that they weren't delivering on what they were saying. So it was just so challenging through COVID because obviously everything was done through a Zoom call. So I think that was also a barrier, and if we could do it again, absolutely we would have gone over there and set up shop over there and had someone there that can sort of monitor these things and meet people in person. And there's nothing better than meeting somebody in person to do a deal, right? So I guess getting back to the support and who else we used, I think doing collabs with other like-minded businesses in those countries really, really help as well. And just building a network of businesses, so going to like fine food shows in Melbourne or Sydney, for example. If you're looking to go to Australia, you're instantly there talking to those businesses, listening to the problems that they're solving. Everybody's on the same journey. It doesn't matter what country you're in, everyone's trying to do the same thing. And so it's quite cool because you can build credibility with them quite quickly, and most people are generally happy to share what they've learned. So we've had a lot of learnings through that. And it's also been great because it's been awesome to network with on a global stage. It's so cool. What else? I think, I guess I go back to NZTE. If I think of when we went into Vietnam, not only are they able to sort of help you tap into the logistics and certifications and all that sort of thing, the language barrier was huge going to Vietnam. I can't speak Vietnamese. So I was actually, through NZTE, I was introduced to a distributor who couldn't speak English very well. So NZTE, I had my own translator, and the meetings were quite long because obviously the middle person, NZTE is trying to translate, but it was a way for me to build trust and to have that, still build that strong relationship through a Zoom call, and also get sales out of it as well, which was fantastic. And then actually that relationship and also with NZTE and also with a distributor eventuated in us going over to Vietnam with Tristan Wastney, and we had our CEO or GM at the time and Tristan Wastney standing with my distributor in the middle. How cool is it to have that sort of offering to a distributor to build a relationship in Vietnam, and none of that would have happened without NZTE. So I still think they're fantastic. I guess you just have to know who to talk to and make sure that you do the mahi yourself. You can't just rely on them. They're really there for a platform to help connect those dots together and point you in the right direction. But you still have to take that information and do the work. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. Yeah. But
So obviously, that local resource has been really helpful in terms of NZTE, and you've been able to take those steps and some amazing experiences along the way. In terms of some of those experiences, you talked about some of the challenges, but was there anything that went really well or better than you thought? What were some of the key wins that were perhaps surprising or just went really well?
Yeah. I have to think back, man. I feel like there was more disappointment than there was wins. Especially going into the US. That was tough, eh? But yeah, it was some great wins. I mean, certainly in Australia. Well, the Jacinda thing going into Vietnam, getting showcased and put on the world stage there was freaking awesome. That was amazing. And going into Australia, I think we did about 60 or 70 grand in about 2 days online sales.
Wow.
And that was when I launched our Feijoa product for the first time into Australia. Well, I think we did, it was actually, I think we hit that Feijoa product in Australia before we even almost hit it in New Zealand. And that was just producing a little bit of content, solely targeting expat Kiwis, saying a taste of home, you know? If you want a taste of home, grab some of this stuff, it's good for you. So, and that just went off, eh? It was amazing. I think I spent like $1,500 on my ad spend.
Yeah.
And we did over 50 grand or 70 grand or something like that in revenue. I can't remember. It was a couple of years ago when we ran that campaign. That was probably the biggest win we had with like the littlest amount of ad spend. And we didn't even put any effort into it. Whereas, you know, we've run so many campaigns, you know, hundreds and hundreds of pieces of content. And yet that was the one that was probably the biggest winner. So that was something really cool. I think another win we've had was getting into Costco in Australia in Melbourne, and that also saw us getting Costco here in New Zealand, which then opened up the doors into Costco into the US. We didn't actually get into Costco in the US because we ended up exiting from the US just through literally the cost of logistics, and we just weren't ready at the time to scale to that level. But you know, those opportunities were there, and they're still there now. We've just taken a different direction with our business, and that's largely through our business model that we're running right now.
That's cool. So there's definitely some some big opportunities out there, and obviously some gems and some rushes of some great experiences. But as you mentioned, there's definitely some challenges that go along with that, especially in the US market, as you've mentioned. If you were to kind of, I guess, boil it down to just a few key things, what would you say were the main core challenges that you faced?
Logistics being, obviously one of them. Yeah. So it is very, very challenging. You've got to build a lot of relationships on both sides of the country. So good relationships with your freight forwarders here in New Zealand, and then you need a good US agent that can represent you as a company, and then you need your freight forwarders in the US and a really good 3PL, and all of those need to be talking the same, singing the same tune. And if they're not connected and all talking, so you need to understand that. So that's definitely one key thing. The other key thing is having a good margin. If you don't have a good margin, then it simply won't work. And whether it's going into Amazon or whether you're selling direct to consumer or B2B, you need to choose products that are delivering a minimum of 40 to 50%. If they're not, then wasting your time, because you're going to have to price this thing up that high, it's not going to sell, and you're just not going to get the traction you're looking for. The third one would be the scale. You've got to literally be able to supply, and the timing of supply as well. So you need to be planning 6 months ahead of yourself at any given point. And I guess there's another one which is around the labelling and the packaging. There's actually lots, but those would probably be the main ones. Making sure that you've got really, really good packaging that is clear and compliant. Yeah. And there's some really, really clever people in New Zealand here that can help support that. Happy to give you some of those names later on if you want them.
Amazing.
If
you were to wave your magic wand and do it all over again, what would you do differently second time round?
Wouldn't go into the US. What would I do differently? There's so many things I would do differently. I think that I would focus far more on margin. We just try to do everything. We're vertically, and for good reason too. And we're vertically integrated company. We grow our own fruit. We set up our own supply chains with multiple growers across New Zealand. We stored all our own fruit. We which meant keeping it in a cool store and freezing it down as well. We built world first machinery to customize processing the fruit, packaging it all, marking it all, the whole shebang, right? And all of that is huge cost. I think if I was to do it again, I the products I've created, I'd go and sell first before I make any more. So what I mean by that is go and make yourself 50 packets of a product, and then go and create a market for that product, and get a strong demand, and then scale that, then supply the product, not the other way around. Because when the model we ran was that, we had to order 200 tonne of gold kiwi fruit because it only grows for a set time a year, right? And then we had to store that, and then we had to process it, and so we stick it where there's a huge amount of cost of the inventory to be sitting on all of that. Then, it's a bit of a mad rush to sell it before it goes off again. Where I think if we were smarter around how we did that, because the problem with our products, it's a niche product too, right? So it means you've got to target a very thin and wide audience. And you've got to go far and wide. In other words, you need to be in the US, you need to be in Japan, you need to be in Australia, you need to be, because the reality is there's only a small market here in New Zealand for it. It's expensive. I can't afford to buy it. So you're targeting the people that have the money, and so I think that is something I do differently. I also think, in other words, try and outsource a lot of our stuff. Opposed to trying to do it all ourselves, because of the sheer amount of capital that requires. I think I would have, and that would have also dictated having less employees, because we wouldn't have needed them, and focusing more of our labour spend on sales and marketing, and establishing more of those B2B relationships where we can move those volumes. I think for the e-commerce space, I actually think we did a really good job of that overall. What I do differently there would be, knowing what I know now, obviously, probably wouldn't have spent the money I spent on agencies. I would have found probably one agency that could do everything, and done that slower. Built a stronger foundation first to really understand what that demographic is, and the data needed, because you can get data from any demographic. It doesn't mean it's the right data. And I think we went down a few rabbit holes, but ultimately, you need the product has to be really good. You've got to have a really good margin, otherwise you're forced to move large volumes, which means it forces you to export, and then that opens up a whole bunch of risk, and there's a lot of cost, and it generally means you've got to have a lot of labour as well. I would have tried to simplify things more. I would have focused on less products and improved a bit of margin, and some of the other things I mentioned. So
amazing, power of streamlining, hey?
Yeah.
And I suppose for the audience listening, or perhaps some ambitious Kiwi business owners that are thinking about expanding overseas, if you kind of had one piece of key advice, what would that be?
Yeah, that's a hard question.
It can be more than one.
If I had a piece of advice for people that want to export, it kind of goes back to all the things I said, man. You've got to have a strong margin. If you don't have a strong margin, it's never going to work. You've got to have the operational skills to be able to supply it, and you have to understand that. You've got to understand the market. If you don't understand the market, then you're beating a dead horse trying to get this stuff sold. Yeah. Sales is the most important thing in your business, really. If you don't have sales, you don't have a business, right? So, and how do you get sales? Well, you've got to understand your market so you can target the right audience. And so I think those are probably the three major things you need to have. And I guess also just don't be afraid to wrap some good support of professionals around you that can offer you good advice. Don't be afraid to I was messaging different food businesses and different companies over in the US, over in Japan, over in Australia, even in China. And I was just literally cold calling these guys and messaging them and asking them for advice. And I was always amazed by how willing people are to give you advice and connect. So I think that's really important. That's probably the main advice I can give, really. It's different for each business, obviously. Everyone comes with a different set of skills, and everyone's got different products with different margins and different capabilities on how they can produce it. And I think certainly don't try and export in COVID either. If we have another COVID event, just try and stick to New Zealand, Australia.
Hard to plan for that sometimes, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
No, hey, look, really appreciate you taking the time out to answer some questions around your business and your experience, and being able to share those insights from that journey with our audience today. Thanks heaps for your time.
No worries, man. It's my pleasure. Cheers.